So here's the quote. Practice on a Wednesday was going bad, and you could see Coach Parcells getting heated up. He was not happy with the way, or was not happy with how anything was going. There was no energy. And I see him call Dan over to the side and say a couple of words to him. And Dan runs back in the huddle. And Parcells, with his arms crossed like he always did, walked over to me and said, "Watch this, Todd." A fight ensued the next play, and Dan Campbell was in the middle of it. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you the story. Dan Campbell is going to tell you the story. And I think you guys are going to have some fun with this one. So let's bring in Dan Campbell, man. And this story, it is timeless. Dan Campbell. Here we go.
This is Dan Campbell, our longtime friend from his days with the Aggies and the Cowboys, and we never had you on when you played at Glen Rose, but that's our fault. We probably should have, although I think I was still in college at the time. I have to ask you about a Todd Haley interview he did recently. He was on with Kevin Clark or something, and I was listening, and he dusted off a Dan Campbell story I had never heard, and I don't even know if it's real, but he was talking about you playing for the Cowboys. It was a pretty stale practice. Parcells was unhappy that there was no juice in the practice, probably a Wednesday, I think he said. And Parcells called you over and said something to you, and you went back out there, and on the very next play, you were involved in a fight. And maybe almost like you were a hockey enforcer that had to go out there and change the kind of the tenor of what's going on. And I want to hear that story if it in fact is true.
Classic Dan. This is so Dan. I could see it, and I hope we can find some video of it soon.
Well, it is true.
Yes.
It is true. Now I'm trying to remember.
All right, you guys heard the guy in the background when Dan said, "It is true," and he goes, "Yes," because he's like, "Yeah, man, this is a true story, and I'm going to hear it from the guy." Here we go.
Exactly at what point that was, when it was, because this happened a couple of times. So, one I always tell, I do remember getting into it with Greg Ellis, and it was after Parcells. It was exactly what Todd Haley had said, and basically, Bill just pulls me over. We're all getting back in the huddle, and as the receivers are trying to come back, he grabs me and he said, "You need to shake it up a little bit." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "You need to. I need you to start something here." I said, "What do you start? What do you mean? Just do something. I don't care. Grab somebody and punch them, push them. I don't care. But we need some energy out of here." So. The guy I'm lined up over is Greg Ellis. So I think, the whistle had blown and, he turned around and I just pushed him, I pushed him in the back and hit him in the back of the head, which Greg is a good friend of mine, man. We competed every day. I love those guys. And so, but I kind of sacrificed it for what Bill wanted. And sure enough, then we get in a big scuffle and the teams, we're all out there going at it. But it did. The energy level was raised and we finished with a pretty good practice. So, that was Parcells. He knew what he was doing, man. He always did. Got a lot of respect for Bill, but yeah, he would come to me periodically and tell me to shake things up.
God, you were that guy.
So does that still happen today?
Well, yes and no. I think you got to be careful who you ask to do that. I do think that I know from what I do and with the guys, we're pretty competitive anyway. I allow a lot of things to go on in practice. I don't want to say it's undisciplined. That's not what it is, but it is highly competitive. And, I think the more you can get under a teammate's skin, that makes your practice really good, man. Gets guys going, coaches talking shit. I just think, man, your energy level raises the competition and you got nowhere to hide, and guys can get exposed or they're going to raise their level of play. And so really, we kind of get it organically. I don't need to fabricate it.